Hi there, this is David, and we have some really exciting new RPG news today about Wild Arms and Shadow Heart's Successors. Yeah, a double Kickstarter campaign is going to be launched for some spiritual successors for those two legacy series. If you don't know what they are, Wild Arms started on the PlayStation 1 with Wild Arms 1 and 2, then it moved on to the PlayStation 2 with 3, 4, and 5, and also the PSP with XF, and they were traditional turn-based JRPGs. Shadow Hearts as well, it's more of a horror-themed JRPG that was strictly on the PlayStation 2. They are some of the best games released for their respective systems, and I've talked about them extensively in some of my other videos, talking about games that kind of fell off the face of the earth after the PS2 went away. The PS2 came, they had great JRPGs, PS3 came, done. So now we're finally getting some news back on these great games, and they are going to be developed by the original development team that created them in the first place. The Kickstarter campaign is going to be starting on August 29th in just a couple of days for these two spiritual successors. So let's talk about that here. I don't fund a lot of Kickstarters myself. I'm not really into that sort of thing. However, I have done it in the past. I have funded a couple here and there, and I am definitely going to be funding this one. They have a collective goal. It's either all or nothing. They either both get made or they don't. A collective goal of $750,000, which is quite a pretty penny, but I do think that it's worth it, and I do think that it is going to be funded. Then it says that for that goal, you will be getting a PC release for each game, and then there's going to be a nearby stretch goal to give ports to the PS5, not the 4, the Xbox Series, and then it says the newest Nintendo hardware at the time. So I don't know if this means that they have any kind of inside information as far as maybe the Nintendo Switch 2 or the Nintendo Switch Pro is coming out or something, or if they just know that they're going to be taking their sweet time making these games. I know that development on these games has not actually started, and it will not start until the Kickstarter goal is met. Right now, all the concept art that they have, all the ideas that they have right now is just that. It's just ideas. It's just concept art. Nothing's actually developed, but they do have the teams together to create these games. There's going to be 3 stretch goals for the 2 games, for PENNYBLOOD and for Armed Fantasia. Then there's also going to be a combination goal as well. So each game's going to have their own individual stretch goals, and then there's going to be a combination goal where that will unlock bonuses for both of the games. So that's pretty neat. This is the first kind of double Kickstarter of its kind, so that's really, really neat. And then over here on Gamatsu, and again, I'm going to be linking both of these articles that I'm looking at in the video description if you want to read it yourself. There is an interview where we can learn a little bit more about these 2 games. So let's look into that. Here we have the interview. Let's just go straight on into it. It says, what makes Armed Fantasia a spiritual successor to Wild Arms, and what elements does it carry over? So let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. It says that because it is a spiritual successor, they can't actually bring over characters' names or fill Gaia or things like that, but they can bring it over in a spiritual sort of way. So it says the setting is a wilderness on the brink of destruction, and the story is a mix of Western and fantasy that will be similar. And it says that his personal tastes and style as a game designer will also be carried over throughout the story as well. Then in Wild Arms, you had the Drifters who were adventuring, but here we have Pathfinders, and they're going to be adventuring. Again, it's the same sort of thing, just a different word. And the main hero is from a town called Londinium, and essentially his grandfather dies, which is his last link to that town, so he then sets off on a journey to find his childhood best friend and discover why the world is kind of the way that it is, why the world is kind of dying like this. It uses arms, but again, they're not, called, well, they are. They are called arms. It says that it has a special meaning of the arm. It says the meaning of arm varies from wild arms game to the next, and the same is true here. Can you talk about more about them? Because right now the arms stands for Ether Reaction Maximizers, essentially guns. Yeah, this is wild arms. We all know what it is. There's also like force points and stuff that the party shares and uses, and all the different powers, just like in Wild Arms. I love it, I love it, I love it. And you know how whenever you explore dungeons in Wild Arms and you used various tools to get through? It says tools are a returning concept, this time under the name gadgets. So again, it's the same sort of thing. In Wild Arms, tools were used to clear dungeon obstacles, and the same is true in Armed Fantasia. So it says that we're still figuring out the specifics for this, but stuff like using bombs to whip rocks in your path, that sort of thing, will be happening. They want to make it so there's multiple solutions for the puzzles, but it says in order to do that, we'll need a lot more development funds. At the moment, before the Kickstarter has even begun, we can't be for certain what will actually be possible. Then, look at this concept art of the world map right here. It says, Armed Fantasia is described as a large-scale JRPG adventure with a gigantic world map that players will travel across on foot and in various vehicles. They want you to be able to explore this place by land, sea, and air. This is giving me some Xenoblade vibes. I don't know if that's what they're going for. They're probably going to be going for something a little bit more scaled down than that. Probably something more like Tales of Arise with the various regions and zones and things like that. But in the interview, he says the world map's going to be gigantic. I want it to be so big that there isn't a word to express how big it is. For vehicles, we're planning on having vehicles for land, sea, and air. By acquiring said vehicles, will make it easier to explore the nooks and crannies of the world. Then they ask, and this is my thing, is it going to be a traditional world map style like Final Fantasy VII or Wild Arms 1, or is it going to be rendered at the same scale as the dungeons and the towns like more of the modern games that we've seen, like Xenoblade? And they're saying again, we're figuring that out right now. We don't know. It depends on the Kickstarter. But in my personal opinion, I hope we don't have to limit it to the size of the towns or dungeons. So yeah, he wants it to be as big as humanly possible. I love it. I love it. I love it. It says here puzzle solving elements on the world map as well. Talks about side quests to be had, so that's pretty neat. And then down here, this is the battle system. And yeah, looking at this, you see the force gauge right here, that your party shares those force points. You see your party members down here with their HP and their SP. It looks turn-based. You see a turn order gauge over here where your party is attacking. The enemies are down here. It looks like a Final Fantasy X turn order gauge right there. And then it says, can you talk about the turn-based cross-order tactics battle system? What are chain order and force breaks? How can they be utilized to battle more strategically? It says, order change are when the characters attack the same enemy one after another. It increases the attack power of their attacks and the effects of the skills that they use. And they can be used not only by the party, but the enemies as well. So if you see the enemies setting up an order chain, you can kind of interrupt their chain. And if you don't, you'll end up taking a ton of damage. And the force breaks are flashy techniques that use another source of damage for your team. Whenever your force break gauge is filled, you can use those force breaks kind of like limit breaks. So depending on what abilities your party members has, you can deal multiple damage, or you can restore HP or buff yourself in some way. Again, just like in the original Wild Arms. I love it. I love it. I love it. So that's pretty cool. We have some more concept artwork right here, and I thought that this was interesting. In the interview, it says, back whenever I developed Wild Arms 4, various circumstances caused us to leave out the world map entirely. And yeah, that was my big upset with Wild Arms 4 as well. It was the shortest of the Wild Arms game. I liked it, and I liked the battle system, but it was definitely the shortest, and it did have a crummy world map. It says, the frustration I felt from that time remains with my heart to this day. That's why I want to include the best high-quality world map that I can in this new title. And I do know that the world map in Wild Arms 5 was great! So if it's anything like that, and that was like, what, 15 something years ago, they can knock this one out of the park. It looks like this, that we have some new staff members. The old staff members are returning. Then let's talk a little bit about PENNYBLOOD right here, which is the Shadow Hearts successor that's coming up. So we have the same sort of interview. It says, why is it a spiritual successor to Shadow Hearts, and what elements does it carry over? Now, this is set in 1923. In America in 1923, in the middle of the Roaring Twenties, so it is more of a modern take on a JRPG. It isn't fantastical, but it does have horror aspects. It says, horror aspects such as black magic and creepy creatures are two major elements that is inherited from its predecessors. We have a detective investigating and solving bizarre murder incidents, and yeah, so that's kind of cool. It reminds me of the detective agency in Shadow Hearts 3 right there. So even though it's going to be taking place in America, the story's also going to be going through Europe and Asia as well. It says the protagonist Matthew is an investigator cursed with transformation abilities inherited from his father, which he must use to vanquish creatures and uncover the truth behind a bizarre incident. What elements of cosmic horror can we expect to encounter in this story? So yeah, just as the protagonists of Shadow Hearts could kind of transform into demonic creatures and monsters and stuff, it looks like that is back in PENNYBLOOD as well. So that's really neat. It says Matthew will close in on a criminal hiding into the shadows who is slowly becoming a threat to all of the human race. So yeah, I love it. Look at this. You can see over here this mini map up in the corner. It looks like you're exploring a really packed in kind of almost Victorian looking city. I wonder if this is Europe, looking at that clock tower right there. It says over here that Matthew is going to be wandering through the graveyard, just like in Shadow Hearts and Shadow Hearts 2. This is just fantastic. So it says, can you tell us more about Matthew and his companions? Who are they and how will their paths cross? At first, Matthew prepares to dispassionately complete his new job just like every other one that's been assigned to him. But as he proceeds with the investigation, he starts searching for Amelia, a woman who went missing while in Japan. Matthew's meeting with Amelia will greatly change the course of his life. Suzeri is someone who helps Matthew out while he's in Japan. No, perhaps surveillance agent is more accurate. Yeah. So we're going to be exploring multiple locations, including New York, Japan, China, and Europe. That's really cool. I like it. It's going to be exactly 100 years ago. So next it says about the overworld map. Whereas the overworld map looks like it's going to be huge in Fantasia, PENNYBLOOD wants it to be much more of a selection type world map, just like the Shadow Hearts series always was. That's fine with me, because again, this is a spiritual successor to Shadow Hearts, and they're just trying to do everything the same way that it was back when. But they do want to create it in a 3D plane so that you can change perspective and find hidden landmarks and new routes that can lead them to various different evidences, which kind of almost reminds me of the world map of maybe something like Breath of Fire 3. So I'm wondering if it's going to be something like that. Then it talks about, various side quests that of course you can engage in, exploration. It says you'll solve cases using fingerprinting, voice print profiling, mental profiling, and pioneering methods of criminal profiling that rely on science to nail criminals. So this is almost, it's like Shadow Hearts meets like a little detective agency sort of thing. It kind of reminds me of some sort of visual novel sort of stuff that I've seen before in some other games. So that's pretty neat. I do like that. Then we have the turn-based battle system. And again, turn-based. Hell yeah, I'm all about this. But it's called the Psychosigil battle system. And Basically, what's going on here is, remember the SP system, the sanity point system from Shadow Hearts, where you would start off completely sane, and then each time that like a turn went by, your SP would kind of tick down until you finally lost control and you went insane. And yeah, that's back, but with a twist. Now, whenever your SP goes down to 0, you will gain more strength, you will gain more power, you'll still maintain control of those characters, and if they do get hit again by an enemy, you'll kind of slap them out of berserkness, and then they'll gain back their sanity points and all that. So it's just a different little twist on that, because sometimes that sanity, system in the original Shadow Hearts could just be a little bit unforgiving, especially in some boss fights, and I really wasn't a fan of that, so hopefully this does help with that. Looking at this game, it does seem a little bit darker, it does seem a little bit more, I don't know, just artsy, I guess? I don't really know how to explain it. It almost looks like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure of all weird things. I don't know. I just think it looks neat. It looks cool. I like it. I like it. I like it. Now it says we've talked about some similarities between PENNYBLOOD and its predecessors, but what's different now between PENNYBLOOD and Shadow Hearts? So he says, by setting this game as a product aimed for adults from the start, I aim to restore the creepiness and grotesque atmosphere that gradually faded out from my previous series and really see how far I can take things. So, and I talked about this before, how Shadow Hearts, like the first one was really, really, really creepy, and then it kind of got a little bit more funny in the second one, until by the third game, it was really all about the humor and not really the horror. Like the horror just kind of faded out. It looks like they're going back down to the basics. They're going back into the horror mode here with Shadow Hearts. So, this is just a really cool thing. I thought that this kind of deserved its own video to talk about because I love Wild Arms, I love Shadow Hearts, and I am really, really happy that this is happening. So right now, you can go to Kickstarter and you can see it and you can kind of click on it to follow it so that you'll be notified whenever it does pop up. And I did that for myself because I definitely want this. I mean, I want to support this. This is definitely something, this is right up my alley. I've talked in depth about how I love Wild Arms, how I love Shadow Hearts, and how I'd love for them to come back. And now this is a way for them to come back. Suikoden's coming back. Wild Arms, Shadow Hearts, they're all coming back. What's old is new again, and I am here for it. Thank you all so much. Let me know what y'all are excited about in the comments. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comments, as always, and have a good day.